Hello everyone, this is our group assignment 1 and the member that we have is Elena Chang, Chang, CHIA, Regina, KWAN and John Reed. And this is our questions and the data.
Hi, my name is John RUMPA and my matrix number is BT2330364. Now I'm going to present about the relative frequency of two metrics. First, the customer satisfaction scores, which is grouped into 5% intervals. The output shows that 30% of companies falls in the 85 until 90% range, which is the highest levels of the satisfaction. Then 23.3% in both 80 until 85% and 90 until 95%, while 16.7% fall in the 75 until 80% range, and the lowest is 6.7% fall within the 70 until 75% range. This shows the right skewed distribution, highlighting a generally positive satisfaction. Next is for the customer retention rate. It's the highest, which is 26.7% in the 70 until 75 range, followed by 20% in the 65 until 70 range and 75 until 80 range. The retention rate gradually decreased with 16.7% in the 80 until 85 range. The lowest frequency, however, is 6.7% in the 60 until 65% range, indicate that small portions of company have low retentions. Overall, this distribution shows symmetrical around the peak, however slightly skewed around the lowest retention range. Comparison of the two key metrics, the customer satisfaction score illustrating a right skew distribution as 76.6% of businesses score above 80% satisfactions. That is speaking 30% of business scoring in the 85 until 90% range, with only 6.7% in the lower 70 until 75% bracket, meaning that high satisfaction is prevalent, and customer retention rate having more balanced distribution, speaking at 26.7% in the 70 until 75% range, while tapering only 10% in the highest 85 until 90% range. This shows that disparity where high satisfactions does not equate to the retention.
My name is Elena. My metric number is BT23303. Next, we move to cumulative data, which is two-thirds of data, which is certification score and retention rates. The output show each range with its cumulative percentage. For certification score starting from 70 to 75%, up to 90 to 95%, the cumulative percentage are 6.70%, 23.3%, 46.7%, and 100%. For retention rate, from 60 to 55% to 85 to 90%, 8.7%, 26.7%, 53.3%, 70.3%, 90%, and 100%. For certification, 76.7% of companies score below 90% and all reach up to 95%. And then for retention, 90% are below 85% and the rest reach up of 90%. This is highlight milestone like 80% and 85% makes sense because these are common business benchmarks. For example, what percentage of company meet certain thresholds important for business performance. My name is Elena. My metric number is BT23303. Next, we move to cumulative data, which is two-thirds of data. This is show the table of customer satisfaction score and customer retention rate. For customer satisfaction score, 76.7% of company achieves more than 90% satisfaction. Also that 53.3% gap between median, which is 46.7%, and top quintile is 76.7%, while for customer retention rates, that show that 78.7% of companies fell below 80% retention. 10% jump the lead to move from median, which is 53.3%, to competitive threshold, which is 73.3%. This is show the table of customer satisfaction.
I'm Chang, metric number BT2330342. We'll present part 2 of our analysis, where we compare the measure of central location for customer satisfaction scores and customer retention rates. First, let's look at the mean. The mean is simply the average. To calculate it, we sum all the values and divide by the total numbers of values. Next is the median. The median is the middle value when the data is arranged in ascending order. If we have an even number of data points, we take the average of the two middle values. Finally is the mode. The mode is the most frequently occurring value in a dataset. The following is the calculation for the mean, median, and mode. Let's start with the mean. We will add all the individual scores and divide by the total number of business survey, which is 30. We found a mean customer satisfaction score is 84.23% and a mean customer retention rate is 74.07%. Now is the medians. According to the dataset given in the sorted data, the number of observations is given. So, we take the average of the two middle values. The answer of median customer satisfaction score is 85% and the median retention rate is 73%. Lastly is mode. The most frequent customer satisfaction score is 88% and 85%, while the most frequent retention rate is 68%. Next is the interpretation of result of our central tendency analysis for customer satisfaction and retention. The mean customer satisfaction score is 84.23%. This indicates that customers are quite satisfied with the service or product offered. The median customer satisfaction score is 85%. This symmetric distribution further supports the positive overall customer experience. While the mode is 88% and 85%. This clustering around high satisfaction level is very encouraging, showing a significant portion of business consistently deliver a positive customer experience. Now, let's look at the customer retention rate. The mean retention rate is 74.07%. This highlights a significant gap. While customers are generally satisfied, a substantial portion are not becoming repeat customers. Median retention rate is 73%, is slightly lower than the mean, indicating a relatively balanced distribution. The mode for customer retention rate is 68%. This lower mode compared to the satisfaction mode further emphasizes the challenge of converting high satisfaction into long-term customer loyalty.
My name is Elena Chang and number metric is BT2330314, and I'm presenting the part 3, calculate the percentile and the construct workflow of each of the two key metrics. For finding the percentile, we can use this formula, and for construct the workflow, we can use the formula for detecting outlier to calculate interquartile range, then apply the 1.5 times interquartile range to find the lower and the upper outlier limits. We must finding the minimum 25 percentiles or quartile 1, 55 percentiles or median 75 percentiles or quartile 3, and a maximum. The percentiles and the box flows customer satisfaction score minimum is 70, 25 percentile is 79.75, 50 percentile is 18.5, and 75 percentile is 89.25, and maximum is 93. The interquartile rate is 9.5, interquartile rate times 1.5 is 14.25, lower outliers limit is 16.5, and upper outlier limit is 103.5. Since all values fall between 16.5 and 103.5, we can conclude that there are no outliers in this data. The scores are tightly grouped in the upper range, showing high customer satisfaction with little variation. The percentiles and box flow customer retention rate minimum is 60, and 25 percentiles is 68, 50 percentiles is 74, 75 percentiles is 80, and maximum is 88. The interquartile rate is 12, interquartile rate times 1.5 is 80, and lower outlier limit is 50, and the upper outlier limit is 68. Since all values fall between 50 and 98, there are no outliers in the data. This shows the customer retention is very consistent.
I am Regina MELANIE patient. My metric number is BT2330372, and I will continue the discussion in part 4, which is I will discuss in 4 things, namely range, mean absolute deviation or MAD, variation and standard deviation, and coefficient of variation. Okay, first I will discuss about the range. Range is the difference between the maximum and minimum value in a set of data. It gives an idea of how far the data is spread. To find that value, the maximum value is subtract from the minimum value. In the data that has been given, the customer satisfaction score is 23%, which is lower than the customer retention rate, which is 28%. This shows that the customer retention rate is better than the customer satisfaction rate. This is because the higher the percentage, the more positive the performance. Second is the mean absolute deviation or MAD. MAD is a static measure that shows the average distance of each data value from the mean of the data regardless of whether it is positive or negative. For customer satisfaction score, it is 4.88, while for customer retention rate is 5.74. Here it can be seen that customer retention rate is less consistent or less stable than the customer satisfaction rate because higher value indicate inconsistency. Third, variance and standard deviation, which is a statistical measure used to measure the spread of variation of data from the average. For variance, it is the average sum of the square difference between each data value and the average, while for standard deviation, it is the square root of the variance. The variance and standard deviation for customer satisfaction score is 6.00%, while customer retention rate is 7.01%. From the calculated data result, it shows that the customer retention rate is more difficult to control or predict and less stable than customer satisfaction rate. Lastly is the coefficient of variation, which means a statistical measure that shows the extent of the spread or variability of the data compared to the average or mean. In percentage form, for customer satisfaction rate, it is 0.07, while for customer retention rate is 0.09. This shows the customer satisfaction score is more consistent and stable compared to customer retention rate. Lastly is the coefficient of variation.
Hello everyone, my name is Jessica Kwan and I will be presenting part 5, which is the measures of association. In this part, we analyze the relationship between two important business metrics, which is the customer satisfaction score, which we call a variable X, and the customer retention rate, which is we call variable Y. This analysis is based on data from 30 local businesses. First, we calculate the mean values of both variables. The mean satisfaction score is 84.23, and then the mean retention rate is 74.07. Next, we calculate the sample covariance, which tells us whether the two variables move together. The formula for covariance is the sum of X minus the mean of X times Y minus the mean of Y, and then divided by N minus 1. For example, number of customer satisfaction rate for Darlene's company, which is X, is 88, and then minus by mean 84.23, and we get 3.77. For retention rate, which is Y, is 75 minus 74.07. Then we multiply X and Y, we get the answer is 35.061. Then we use the same method to calculate for all 30 companies. Then we divide it by N minus 1, which is we get 29. For the covariance, covariance is calculated by taking the sum of the product of the differences between each X value and the mean of X and each Y value and the mean of Y, then dividing the result by N minus 1. We found that the covariance is 39.81. After that, we calculate the standard deviation for both variables, which shows how spread out the values are from the mean. The formula is the square root of the sum of the square differences between each value and the mean, divided by N minus 1. The standard deviation for satisfaction is 5.998, and for retention, it is 7.012. Finally, we calculate the Pearson correlation coefficient, which measures the strength and direction of the relationship between the two variables. The formula is covariance divided by the product of the standard deviation of X and the standard deviation of Y. Using our values, we found the correlation coefficient to be 0.947. So, for the conclusion, we found that the covariance is 39.81. The value is positive. This means that when satisfaction increases, retention tends to increase as well. Then, for the standard deviation, 5.998 for X and 7.012 for Y shows that the values of both variables are moderately and consistently spread around their means. The correlation coefficient is 0.947, indicates that the customer satisfaction and retention have a strong and positive linear relationship. From a business point of view, this is valuable insight. It shows that when customer satisfaction improves, customers are more likely to stay loyal to the business. So, companies should invest in better service, respond to feedback, and improve the customer experience. This can lead to higher loyalty, lower customer loss, and stronger business growth over time.